Dragon's Rise in Season 3 Part 2 has given us a whole load of new details regarding a lot of different topics, and a lot of different answers for a lot of interesting questions. But it has also been the byproduct of a lot of new theories for me, and one of them in particular covers one of my favourite aspects of all of Ninjago, and that is actually the merge. And even though I have done a video on the merge beforehand, and if you haven't seen that, check that out because I really do like that video, there is a aspect to the merge that I feel like that hasn't really been covered yet. And I want to talk about it in this video because part 2 of season 3 has given me so much more ammunition to talk about the after effects of the merge. Because the merge itself is almost said and done. The fact is that that event has came and it has went, and season 1 focused on the merge quakes, and for the most part, that is what was implied to be all that it was when it comes to the merge of Ninjago. But the thing is that I think there is more to it, or more specifically, aftershocks. Which is what I want to talk about today, because I believe the merge never actually ended. I think the main event occurred and the merge quakes are gone, but the merge is still occurring in very interesting ways. So, sit back and relax, and let me talk you through why the merge is still happening. Now, the line of dialogue that sparks my curiosity for this theory actually comes from Season 3, Episode 15, and I do find it interesting to note that this was right in front of us and no one has really picked up on it yet. About a minute into the episode, we have a scene where Cole remarks that the landscape is different to when he was last there, and he wonders if the merge itself is still occurring in some ways, and Kai has a very questionable answer at best. He doesn't know the answer, because how would they? But the thing is that they ponder it, and I do find that interesting, and to the point where it completely set me off. Now, Kai also does link the sudden shift to darkness as an excuse as well, but for the most part that was actually to do with the Spectral Dragonians. I wonder if it was fully meant to be them, because they weren't anywhere near them at the time. But the thing is that it does make sense that that has nothing to do with this theory. But the thing is that the ground and the landscape had nothing to do with it. So if Cole is remarking that the landscape is visibly different to the last time he was there, which was not overly long ago, may I add, the thing is that you have to note that if Cole is noting a difference in the terrain, then something must have shifted that terrain. And that is where they had the idea that it was the merge, and that is what makes complete sense. If the merge is still occurring like I think it is, then it would make sense that it does cause a shift in the landscape. Did it mean a merge with a different realm, or with a different section of the desert? I'm not entirely certain. But the fact is that the land itself is definitively different to last time. So we have to consider the idea that the land itself may be changing. So I decided to look at the rest of Season 3 Part 2 and note whether or not there was any other instances of the land changing or something not being where it was originally intended on being. And funnily enough, there are 2 instances of this actually being the case. Now, of course, I'm only using Season 3 Part 2 examples as the reasoning because it's ultimately the new season, but there are surely examples of this in the previous seasons as well. But like I said, there are 2 instances in this season where something is shifting for no apparent reason, and the first one is the underworld. One of the plot points at the beginning of Season 3 Part 2 is the fact that Raz needs to get into the underworld to be able to use the forge, and the thing is that he doesn't know the location to the entrance of the underworld because the location of the entrance shifts. The thing is that the realm itself doesn't actually change in accordance with the entrance by the looks of it either, so it implies that the entirety of the underworld is shifting locations underneath the merged lands. And the thing is that there's no other reason for the realm or the underworld more specifically to be shifting unless there was something causing it to shift. There has to be a causality to something like this event. And the thing is that the last thing that happened for it was the merge. So what if it is that the merge itself is causing the underworld to still shift around? Of course the entrance is guarded by a skeleton, but the thing is that almost seems by the design of it. And the fact is that if the underworld is shifting in accordance with the skeleton in the merged lands, then something has to be allowing this to actually be the case. And the thing more specifically is the fact that the map to the underworld does note that the location of the entrance does stay in place for a certain amount of time. So it's not like this skeleton is just roaming freely. The thing is that it's going to a location and staying there. And why is that even the case? It's almost like it has to shift in accordance with the rules of something else. The merge. So I don't think it's any coincidence or any little quirk of the underworld the fact that it can move around like this. It seems to be that it has the exact same effect when it comes to, say, the desert the Cole was in. The fact is that it is shifting in accordance with something, and that something can only be the merge. So it seems to have the exact same causality as Cole in the desert. And the thing is, you may even wonder if it is because of the underworld that the desert is different. If the underworld is shifting beneath Ninjago, surely that would have some sort of aftershock. Surely that would have some sort of effect on the land above it. Because if an entire realm is moving beneath the other ones, surely that has some sort of effect. The other evidence that the merge still seems to be happening is the case of Ninjago. The thing is that when the ninja were going back to Ninjago to be able to activate one half of the Arc Dragon, you will note that they said that Ninjago shifted locations. It was officially above an ocean, and they round that off to actually it being Aracor, when in reality it has the exact same logic as every other realm before now. Instead of it being Aracor that was moving the realm, what if it is that when Aracor was restoring the realm of Ninjago, it was actually being coincided with the merge itself. The merged land acknowledged the fact that the realm itself was back, and it's shifting the realm to where it should be along with the rest. Because it makes no sense that Aracor is simply just pushing the realm in a certain direction. Of course he is restoring the realm, but that has nothing to do with the location of the realm itself. Yes, Sora does remark the fact that Aracor clearly must have moved it, but Sora is only kind of taking that at her own guess. She isn't stating that outright, and I honestly don't agree with her on this notion. If Aracor had the ability to completely shift a realm like that, it doesn't really make a lot of sense, because even in the case of Narukon, for example, even when he had infinite wishes, he couldn't restore or move Ninjago, he simply had to raise it above Ninjago. So if Aracor was able to shift an entire realm, it would imply that he had more power than Narukon. And above all else, I don't think it's any coincidence that Ninjago is suddenly shifting place when there is evidence to suggest that there are other realms that are also doing that as well. Of course, you can argue other realms in other different aspects. You can argue that the Cloud Kingdom was also moved at the same time in Season 2, but that was for a different purpose, and it also didn't have the exact same logic that we have now. So I do think it's entirely sensical to believe that, in reality, Ninjago is just simply following the same thing that we have with the underworld, because it is behaving identically, just on a different plane. One's in the sky, whereas one is in the ground. And like I said, having that kind of effect on a realm doesn't seem to be able to be done by simply one person. And that is why I think Ninjago is the third piece that suggests that the realms themselves are still in some sort of after effect of the merge. And the thing is that there are a lot of questions that come from that idea, so let's get into them. The first question is simply, when will it end? When will the merge itself actually stop? When is the merge officially done? And I don't think it ever will be, because the merge itself is a very interesting concept, and one that definitely had its effects on every single realm. We know for a fact that when the merge occurred, all the realms came together, and there were pieces from certain realms that went missing. Like I said, parts of Ninjago went missing, like Aaron's whole neighborhood. So the thing is that realms overlapped, realms intertwined. There were so many different issues that came from the realms coming together, and there is so much reason to believe that if these realms are missing pieces of themselves because they were overlapped by other realms, it makes sense to believe that each of the realms are still in this very contentious state of conflict, where they're simply trying to fight over each other to restore their own lands. It makes entire sense that the landscape and the realms themselves would be shifting, and the landscape would be different if the realms were colliding with each other at a constant state. If all the realms were in a consistent state of trying to complete themselves, because ultimately there is just tons of missing land, you would find it interesting to believe that if they are all fighting to restore themselves, then surely the terrain itself would be constantly in a state of shifting. Does that mean it will ever get to the point where maybe Aaron's house would come back? Who knows? Because whatever realm is colliding with Ninjago at that present moment, I think it's Imperium, you will find that Imperium probably is just overpowering that side of the realm of Ninjago. So I do think in that regard, this whole effect of the merge will simply never end. It makes complete sense to believe that all these different aspects of all the realms coming together will simply create a never-ending shift in the land and in the balance of all of these realms. And honestly, the future implications of that could be crazy. Because we could look at an age where realms simply are going to be fluctuating in what they can and cannot do. Maybe there will be a time where one realm will overlap over another, and parts of certain realms will just simply disappear. There's a lot of different aspects you could consider if this theory is correct. And the other thing I want to wonder is how could this actually affect Ninjago moving forward if I am correct? And I do think it does open the idea of a very interesting aspect, such as the reveal of certain information or certain answers later down the line. Similar to how Kolfrak and Kai were able to pull the remains of a source dragon out of the ground, you could have the idea that the shifting of the realms were able to accomplish those feats as well. What if the shifting of the land caused that remain of the source dragon to be able to be easier to be pulled up? And that has such an interesting aspect for later on down the line. What if the shifting of the realms is going to become a later plot point? What if the shifting would allow something, say like Raz's master, to be able to return? Or give us the answer when it comes to Wu? What if the shifting of the realms is going to be the answer to certain plot points? What if certain aspects and certain key elements to the show moving forward is simply in a state of needing to return back to the merged lands? Because it is very clear that things are still coming back after the events of the merge. Because in the same season 3 part 2 episodes, you will note that Lee, when the portal opens, initially thinks that the administrator is just simply sending in more people. So it implies that there are still people that are misplaced within the merged realms. So what if it is just a case of whatever is going to come next is simply not even in the merged lands yet? And I think that is one of the biggest and most interesting aspects that we could look at moving forward. If the merge is truly not finished, what could it reveal in the future? Because it's clearly being set up to show us maybe the effects of the merge, and that is why I think the merge is still occurring. But this is where I'm going to officially pass it off to you guys. What do you think of this theory? Do you agree or disagree with it? Is there examples of this outside of Season 3 Part 2? Like I said, I wanted to stick to these episodes because it's the new content that we have got. And honestly, it is what sparked my curiosity about the current state of the merge. And it is why I genuinely do believe my theory is correct. I don't think the merge can stop, or ever will truly stop, because simply of the causality and the effects that it did have on the merged lands. But that is just my theory on it, and I would like to know what you think. But that is about it for today, you guys, and thank you very much for watching. Take care. Okay, bye!